Hi, this is supposed to be a panel presentation for the School of Community and Regional Planning Symposium 2020 at UBC, University of British Columbia. The panel is supposed to be on imagining global resilience. And I was supposed to present for this panel on a short paper by the name of Census of Other Globalities. And because of COVID, this thing didn't happen, but nonetheless, I'll try to present it here online. Well, I'm interested in creating new spaces for thinking that may emerge from thinking about spaces. I don't really have sort of any solutions here to give. Just some concepts perhaps to help us cultivate a sense of for other kinds of globability that may be more democratic. I want to start with these images of Funeral for the Climate by Extinction Rebellion. That's from all over the world. To act as catalyst for us to think, to explore more on this notion of other sense, of other kinds of globalities. Now, on one level, these images show protesters using theatrics to protest climate crises and etc. But there's something more than what these images represent. I'm interested in how these visually very powerful images circulate on the internet alongside other images of global struggles and how they can produce an affective force. What is this? This is a force that can rouse an urgency to question and even unsettle our current way of life, especially of our lives within what might be called a transnational network of economies and politics that limit democracy. What is an affective force? There's some branches of philosophy that describe it as a force that transforms us, but doesn't dictate exactly what we must become. It is thus similar to a force produced when we're in awe of a natural or artistic phenomenon. It induces change with an exact determination. Philosopher Brian Masumi has this to say about this: what is affect? To be affected is to be open to the world, he says. And on a political register, affective forces are said to be the first stirrings of the political proper, flush with the felt intensities of life. Affective forces become properly political when new relations between affected bodies and minds combine to express new political agencies. So what makes Extinction Rebellion powerful is perhaps more than the actual message about the climate. As Marshall McLuhan suggested decades ago, the medium is just as powerful as the message. You can see here the rebels, or extinction rebels, marching through downtowns across the world. Broadcasts with other sort of climate and political activism on YouTube produced affective forces to bring us to unravel our circumstances and even spur our desires to link our internal struggles with political ecological struggles elsewhere, virtually or in the flesh, to add to this global realignment of power structures and power relations. These these sort of climate pallbearers, through their rapidity, frequency, and not least their aesthetic presence, express a felt political force that goes beyond mere governance. It is this political force's affective dimension that can spur different struggles to come together to share and create even newer tactics and concepts in each other, through each other. But it's also interesting to note how these new groupings and changings can often occur without a leader figure sort of foretelling a destiny. It is perhaps what we might call a leaderless global collective, a multitude, a legion. However, leaderless doesn't mean the protests have no organizers and everything's just simply spontaneous and chaotic. Some agency is still needed, but this kind of agency arises out of an intersubjective or collective agency. It is an agency irreducible to fixed identities or ideals. Furthermore, a collective by nature is always changing. As such, a collective agency is also always shifting too. Being leaderless embraces a certain degree of experimentation in how perhaps different struggles engage with each other, perhaps also about how encounters and subsequent outcomes are not led by a single social, cultural, political identity. So when you're free from predetermined identity politics, what amounts to liberation, and ethics amounts to the new lines of thinking and new lines of actions emerging from the convergence of different struggles across boundaries. As different activisms come together to forge new shared knowledge and tactics, one begins to realize it is less about sort of a local against a global, but perhaps is really a matter of how to articulate the global to form local structures, and perhaps vice versa. In the end, it's kind of like what's happening in this diagram. You see the circle amidst this grid, this very regular grid, but ultimately the circle is formed from sort of arranging the lines of the grid itself. The circle exists within the grid. It's a rearrangement of the grid's rigid vectors. Likewise, perhaps we can say it's really a matter of rearranging undemocratic transnational networks of economies and politics, real estate, land use, and etc. It's about weaving minor modes of planning into the body of orthodox capital P planning to imbue bylaws or laws with situationally produced ethics as such to unsettle the current global strata and territories and build other globalities that may offer the space and time for muted bodies to act and transform by their own volition. Thank you.